Hello everyone, welcome back again to my YouTube channel, and today we're going to be covering a new lesson. Before we do that, I'd like to thank you for the previous lesson that I had covered. For those of you who watched, for those of you who liked, thank you so much for the support. And for those of you who didn't get a chance to watch this, kindly go back to the YouTube video itself. I will leave a link down below so that you can access it easily. But just head on right there and so that you can be able to get whatever lessons that I was discussing in that previous class. In today's class, we are going to be covering a couple of things, and these include topics that involve coffee journey straight from the seedling right to the final cup that you get to enjoy as a customer. Just to mention the topics in order, we are going to be talking about seedling. So coffee normally starts as a seedling, then it straight ahead heads on to a young plant. After becoming a young plant, it grows ahead to become a cherry, and in this particular case, a ripe cherry. After ripe cherry, we get to harvest it straight from the farm. After it has been harvested, we get to process it. And there are a couple of processing methods which I'm going to be mentioning in this particular lesson for today. After it has been processed, it has to be taken to the milling stage where it's going to be sorted and prepared. Okay. After preparation, we get to send it to the roaster. The roaster in turn is going to roast it. After roasting, it is grounded. Okay. After grounding, you can grind it in whatever grind size that you want, and depending on also the equipment that you're going to be using. So stay tuned to this lesson so that I can be able to give you a little bit more details in regards to these levels of coffee. Looking at the first stage of the coffee journey, we're going to start with seedling. Seedlings typically are grown from the coffee seeds in a nursery, and in the window period of 6 to 8 months, they stay in the nursery before being transported to the fields. In the fields, they are going to be planted so that we can be able to move on to the next stage, which is the young plant. The next stage is the young plant, and for the young plant, the information that I would like for you guys to know is a young plant normally spends between 3 years to 4 years in the field so that you can be able to see the cherries. The third stage that we are going to look at is coffee cherries. So for coffee cherries, by definition, these are just fruits based from the young plant in the second stage. Another thing that I would like for you to consider is the characteristics of a coffee cherry when it is ripe. In terms of color, the color of a ripe cherry is either going to be red or purple. Second characteristics for you to consider is the size. The size of a ripe cherry is normally the size of a grape. The third characteristics that I would like to mention is the feel. When you touch into this specific ripe cherry, it feels soft and it has a squishy texture to it. Okay. Then the last thing that I would like for you to consider is the taste. If you get a chance to taste a ripe cherry, you will notice that it has some sweet notes to it. The fourth stage that we're going to be talking about is harvesting. After the ripe cherry is ready in the fields, we have to harvest it. In terms of harvesting, we have two main types of harvesting techniques. The first one is hand picking, and the second one is by use of machine. So depending on what type of technique you get access to, this is what is going to determine the technique that you are going to adapt to. After harvesting, the next stage is processing methods. For the processing methods, we have 4 main processing methods, and they include wet process, we also have dry process, we also have semi-dry or honey process, and then lastly we have anaerobic process. Something to note, the final cup will be sometimes determined by the main characteristics, taste characteristics that you get from this processing methods. After you have processed your coffee, the next stage is the drying stage. For the drying, you have two main methods of drying your coffee. The first one is sun drying, and the second one is by mechanical method. Okay. The main importance of you drying your coffee is one, to remove the moisture content. The second is to develop flavors. And the third main importance is for storage purposes. We need to have a storage method whereby we can be able to keep the coffee for a longer time before we intend to use it. After your coffee has undergone drying, the next stage is something called milling. For milling, we have people who are called millers. So the millers, their main purpose in this particular stage is just to sort out the coffee by weight and by size. Next stage after milling, the coffee is taken to a roaster. A roaster in turn is going to be proceeding on with the next stage, which is roasting of the coffee. And the main purpose for us to roast our coffee is so that we can develop the flavors and the aromas that you get in your final cup. Something also to note is we have different roast profiles. And in these roast profiles, it is going to be determined by what the customer prefers to have in their coffee, because each roast profile has different taste characteristics. After the coffee has been roasted, it is going to be taken to a barista. For those of you who are joining us new and you don't know the definition of a barista, you can go back to my first video where I have defined a couple of things that you need to understand about a barista. But after roasting, the coffee is taken to a barista, and for the barista, he is going to do something called grinding. And by grinding, I simply mean just crushing your coffee in whichever grind size that is required before you interact it with hot water. And then lastly, the final stage is the final cup. Okay, so for the final cup, this is now where the barista will brew the coffee and serve it to the customer. We have different types of brewing methods, and this method is just going to be determined by what the customer has requested or prefers to enjoy. Recap of what we have covered today. We've covered the coffee journey from the seedling level to the final cup. And in this major title, we have defined the stages as seedling, and then you move on to a young plant. After a young plant, it moves on to a ripe cherry. After being a ripe cherry, it moves on to the harvesting stage. After it has been harvested, it has to be processed. After it has been processed, it has to be taken to the millers who will do the milling. After it has been milled, we get to move it to the next stage, which is roasting. After the roaster has roasted the coffee, he will proceed on to deliver it to the barista, who is going to grind it. After it has been grounded, it's going to be interacted with the right temperature water so that you can be able to get the final cup that you enjoy as a customer. Let's finalize our class for today by looking at fun facts in relation to this main topic that we have covered today. The first fun fact that I would like to mention to you is about the seedling. So for a coffee seedling, it has to be transplanted from the nursery to the field between 6 to 8 months. Another fun fact that I would like to mention to you is in relation to harvesting. So for harvesting, we have another harvesting technique that is called strip picking. And by strip picking, it simply means that they will be getting the cherries straight from the branches by stripping it. Okay, so one disadvantage about strip picking method is it normally cannot be able to define between ripe and unripe cherries. So it normally just collects all the cherries regardless of whether it's ripe or not ripe. But then again, in time, the final cup is not going to be as good tasting as if they had decided to pick the good kinds of cherries. Fun fact in relation to processing method, The most commonly used processing method is dry process. Reasons for this is because it's inexpensive and easy to do. Another thing is it gives you a wide range of flavors in your final cup. Fun fact about the drying stage. We have one unique drying method that was used back in the olden days, which is called tree drying. And what they normally used to do is they just used to take the cherries, put it in baskets or nets, and then they will just hang it on the branches. Okay. So one also advantage for this is normally suitable for people who are in the humid climatic areas. Fun fact about roasting: when we normally roast our coffee beans, it can sometimes double in terms of size and weight, and this is just because of the releasing of gases during the roasting stage, and also this is also due to the expansion of the coffee beans during roasting. That is all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining me in this particular lesson. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you can be able to be updated with each and every of my content. Thank you so much, and hope to see you in the next lesson.